Hey everyone, Chase from the Ridiculous Crew here. I know we had some big news drop recently, so I was just going to give you my take on it. Of course, Josh and I will be talking about this in a lot further detail later on down the road on the podcast. But just my take on this, and a lot of y'all will probably not agree. And keep in mind, Harry Potter, as you know, just from the channel and our podcast, me personally, this is the franchise I hold most dear in my heart, just because I grew up with these characters and how much it meant to me reading these books as a child and also watching these films with these actors grow up. So these movies to me are classic movies. You can't replace that. And I mean, they'll always hold a special place. Now, what I will say about that though is given they were feature films, they had to cut a lot out of the books. And even though it is hard for me to say, it has been a long time since the movies have come out and these feature films in the movies. I think if they were rebooting actual films, I don't think that would be the right way to go because these films are very classic, especially the fact that it pretty much started that whole, you know, big jump up in the fantasy franchise. And, you know, uh, I remember people camping out when I worked at a movie theater in high school for these films. Like people would camp out for these movies to see the midnight premiere. I myself was at the midnight premiere for multiple ones of these films, and it was just like an event, just like we had literally midnight premieres to get the book releases. And what I will say, with that being said, though, is I do think a TV series is the way to go for these and to be rebooted. And just like they're doing, one season at a time here for each book. So The Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone, season one, Chamber of Secrets, season two, and so on. And I think that's the best way to do it. And if you look at it, you really have had to look at the films and the books separately, almost in their own universe. Because if you're like me and have read the books multiple times, just like if you want to, you can go to the podcast and see Josh and I covered this back in 2020. And this was actually one of our thoughts we had on it. That would be a very good idea. So anyone that's saying that this is a bad idea, I mean, I challenge them to really go back in detail and look into the books because they had to cut a lot of stuff out in the films because the books were so big. So, just an example, Goblet of Fire, Josh's favorite book, the whole plot was basically changed in the film. I'm okay with that because I actually enjoyed the film for what it was, and I really enjoyed finally getting to see the Yule Ball on screen and that sort of thing. But even just the Triwizard tournament, like the maze at the end was entirely different. Winky wasn't even in that movie, who, if y'all didn't know, was the other elf besides Dobby. And just another example, like Order of the Phoenix, that's actually my favorite book. One of my favorite scenes in that book is actually the fight Hagrid has with the Death Eaters. That was entirely cut out. The owls, we barely got to see into any of the owls' examinations. And we didn't see any of the golden trio prepare and try to learn how to apparate and that sort of thing. Half Blood Prince, it didn't start out at Spinner's End. There were a lot of differences there, but that's okay. Like, I like the movies for what they are. Directors had to make choices because you can only fit so much into a feature film. That's why I don't think doing a reboot of a feature film, and with it being such a classic franchise that has sparked so much of a following, that would be the right move. But coming out with a TV series, I think this is the right move because they can take their time with it and they can, really follow the books. Here's another example. One of Josh and I's favorite scenes in Goblet of Fire is Priori Incantatem. A lot of people don't even know what Priori Incantatem is because it wasn't even really mentioned at all in the film. The whole idea that, Voldemort and Harry were basically sharing the same wand core, that sort of thing. And I mean, they had the whole entire golden cage that came out when Voldemort shot his spell at Harry, and Harry used his Expelliarmus to stop it in the fourth book. Like, all that was cut out, and I'm not saying it was a wrong decision, because you can only put so much on film, and these movies were highly successful. And I enjoy watching them on my own, especially like on holidays, and even just sitting down, I'll just pop one on, because I mean, this is my favorite franchise. I fell in love with it so much. But I think this is the way to go with a TV series. And anyone that's saying this is a dumb idea, you really need to go back and read the books, because there's so much they could add here. Now, I do think you do have to do this the right way. And I think in order to be respectful for the cast of the original films, they need to try in some way, if they can, to try to get Daniel, Rupert, and Emma doing some sort of cameos or something. Just like, Wednesday even had like cameos from one of the original actresses there. So I think, me personally, this is kind of a different take on things. I think it would be really cool to see Emma be as like a younger McGonagall or something. There's different spins you can put on things to make it work. So this is just my take on it. If you want to see a more full in-depth take, actually, Josh and I talked about this in 2020 when we covered Harry Potter for Chase and Josh Factor Fantasy Podcast, preparing up for the anniversary special that came out, and we covered it for a whole year. But we'll be talking about this more in detail down the road. I'll try to, we'll talk more about Josh's opinion later on when the podcast comes back from off season. So just my take on it, but I think this is a great idea. I think it's very exciting, because you're getting to re-experience the original franchise in even more detail that they had to cut out. But they would have to do it the right way and give respect to the original cast. That's my opinion. What's yours? I'd love to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Have a magical week.